64 palms. Naruto skid back as Neji finished his technique, breathing evenly. Because he chose to keep his Byakugan deactivated for the majority of the fight, he had more than enough chakra to keep going on. It was easy to ignore the physical pain when you train with people such as Gai-sensei. Naruto had blood dripping from his mouth. He went down on one knee, drawing gasps from the crowd. This was the first time he had taken any damage in this fight, and it was enough to send him on one knee. Looking at Neji, he asked in obvious pain, "I assume you were going for physical damage if you couldn't find my Tenketsu, weren't you?" Neji felt a sense of superiority as he looked down on Naruto. No one remained in fighting condition after getting hit by the 8 trigrams, 64 palm technique. You assume correctly. While you were formidable for some time, this is where this ends, Uzumaki. I told you before, fate has decreed that I will win today. Kagebox Orochimaru smiled under the veil, a most formidable technique of the Hyuga clan, Hokage Dano. I wonder if this is the end for the young Uzumaki. Hiruzen smiled as he wrote something down on the notepad. Don't worry, Kazekage Dano. Naruto won't go down this easily. Stans the Jonin had confused looks on their faces. Why did Neji do that? Couldn't he see it? Guy was rubbing his chin. I don't know what Neji was thinking when he did that, but it clearly didn't work the way he might have expected. While the news that Naruto didn't have a chakra network was quite staggering, they wanted to see how Neji would work his way around it. The genin, on the other hand, were different parts worried and resigned. Kiba, Hinata, Sakura, and Ino wore worried looks as they looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun. Hinata whispered in worry, knowing just how formidable the technique that Neji had used was. Even if Neji didn't have Tenketsu to strike, the muscles that were struck would suffer considerable damage. What a technique, Ino whispered in awe as she looked at the kneeling form of Naruto. Naruto had completely dominated the fight from the beginning, but Neji had seemingly turned the tables with just one move. Get up, Naruto! Sakura was chanting in her mind, restraining from saying it out loud. Tenten, on the other hand, just shook her head as if she already knew this was going to happen. While you were good, Naruto, there is no way you can recover from this. Arena Naruto, despite being in pain, chuckled. Neji rose an eyebrow. What's so funny? Naruto looked up with mirth swimming in his eyes. And I told you, fate is very fragile. And he burst into smoke. Cheers erupted from the crowd as it was revealed that the Uzumaki had pulled a fast one on everyone, including Neji. The said genin cursed as he activated his Byakugan and looked around. He almost gasped when he found out where Naruto was, but wasn't able to react in time. Naruto burst from the ground behind him, a predatory grin on his face and body already in motion. Neji was able to angle his body so that his left shoulder took the hit instead of his head. But he winced as the already abused shoulder took another hit, and he was sent toppling away. Naruto brushed off some of the dirt as Neji let out a small groan of pain and frustration, standing up. Most people don't think to look down at the last second. Am I right? Neji said nothing as he gazed scornfully at the smirking blonde. You made the mistake of deactivating your eyes. If you hadn't, you might have noticed that I substituted with my clone at the last second. Your mistake also allowed me to hide without worry under the ground. Pretty good for misdirection and deception, don't you think? Neji grit his teeth. Even if you had substituted with your clone, a shadow clone gets dispelled after one hit. Naruto made a sound of mock realization. That I reinforced it with chakra. It's really not that difficult. He then smirked in a way that sent shivers down Neji's spine. I've somewhat heard about your defensive technique. The ultimate defense of the Hyuga, isn't it? Neji said nothing, which was more than enough for an answer. Holding up 4 shuriken, he challenged, let's test that so-called ultimate defense, shall we? Kagebox your genin is very ingenious, Hokage Dano. Hiruzen nodded, pride coursing through him at how well Naruto was handling himself. So far, Naruto had demonstrated skills that were already above the qualification level of Chunin. He wondered just how Naruto planned to break the ultimate defense of the Hyuga clan. Stans Kiba, Ino and Sakura had shouted in glee when Naruto had popped, the real Naruto kicking Neji away. Hinata had quietly cheered for Naruto, while Tenten was in a state of disbelief. While even Lee couldn't get up after Niji's technique, it was a whole another thing to avoid it successfully altogether. Arena, the shuriken whizzed towards Niji, who jumped to the side to avoid them, opting to conserve chakra. He was stupefied, however, when he spotted a giant ball of fire making its way towards him, fast. Having no time to jump again, he was forced to resort to his defense. Kaiten. Niji reached his maximum rotation speed just as the fireball reached him. The fireball crashed into the spinning dome of chakra, taking only 5 seconds to disperse, which was 4 seconds too late for Niji. It was hard to accurately keep track of your surroundings when you were spinning at a really high speed. So one moment Niji was inside the dome, the other moment Naruto was inside with him. Wait, what? This time, Niji didn't even have time to be fully surprised as he was punched in the face, hard. The sudden application of an external force disrupted the Kaiten, and Niji was bodily thrown through the fireball. I'm really getting tired of being thrown like that, Niji lamented as he stood up once again, a bit burnt from going through the fireball. Stanza Suma and Kurenai were gawking at the way Naruto broke the defensive technique. One moment he was standing outside the dome, the other moment they all saw him disappearing and appearing instantly inside the dome in a blue flash. Hiration, Guy whispered in awe. Even he had not found a way yet to break that defensive technique. But if the Hiration could surpass defenses with such amount of ease. It really was a terrifying technique. No wonder the Yandane was so feared. Kagebox, I really have no more words to describe how impressive that genin of yours is, Hokage Dano. To learn and master the Yandane's most feared technique at such a young age is no small feat, Kazekage complimented. Hiruzen smirked and nodded. That was a masterful use of the Hiration. Naruto must have marked Niji at the very first opportunity. Also, to be capable of using 2 elemental natures is very impressive, Orochimaru complimented. Hiruzen accepted the compliment on behalf of Naruto with a nod and a smirk. Arena Niji breathed heavily as he gazed at Naruto. He was down to just a quarter of his chakra reserves, while Naruto had yet to show any signs of fatigue. What he didn't know that Naruto's chakra reserves were so much larger that he had only used a small drop of the entirety yet. How did I break your defense? Naruto helpfully finished it for him. When he saw him nod, he sighed. While I did say before that only idiots reveal their technique, it's no big secret as to the way I appeared inside with you. Reaching behind him, he pulled out his Hiration kunai, dangling it in his index finger. I'm sure you know what this is. He looked around, discreetly seeing that he had captured the attention of the entire audience. This is a kunai that was once used by my father, Namake's Minato. Mutters rose in the crowd in response to the confirmation of their thoughts from before, but quickly silenced when Naruto continued. The Hiration no Jutsu is a spacetime technique, a combination of ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Basically, this formula here, he showed him his imprinted formula, acts as a beacon for me. Wherever this formula is, I can teleport there without any problem. That means, the reason I was able to get in there is because you already have a mark on you. Niji had never widened his eyes this much in his entire life. He desperately searched for the place where Naruto had placed his formula, and found it beneath his forearm. Never before had he been so outclassed in a fight. How had he failed to notice such a simple thing? Naruto spun the kunai, catching it in a reverse hold. The look on his face was almost as if set in stone. It was the same look the yellow flash gave to his enemies before killing them. I could have ended the fight the moment we engaged in taijutsu. In another scenario, if you would have been my enemy and not a comrade, you were dead the moment I put this mark on you. Silence rang in the entire statement as the cold truth of the words hit each person. It was only now that they realized just how truly dangerous and lethal the Yandane's use of this jutsu was. It was basically as if you were marked by death. If you had this mark, there was no escape for you. Then why didn't you? Naruto raised an eyebrow and put the kunai back in his pouch. Tell me something, Niji. Why do you believe in fate so much? What gives you the excuse to claim that everything is fated to be? Niji looked surprised for a moment, but then his eyes hardened. He reached for his headband and removed it. Because of this, he said, pointing to a green seal on his forehead. It was a cross in the middle, with hooks on either side of the cross. The birdcage seal is given to the branch house members of the Hyuga clan by the main house members. While it may seem that both the houses are family, it is a lie. The cold reality is that the branch house members only act as servants to the main house, he explained. Naruto didn't attack him when Neji closed his eyes, instead opting to hear his story out. The seal is given to the branch house members to protect our prized bloodline from falling into our enemies' hands. After the death of a house member, the seal activates and seals the abilities of Byakugan. By that, I mean this seal binds us until death. A destiny from which we cannot escape. Neji told him about the Hyuga incident which happened 8 years ago. How Hinata was almost kidnapped by the ambassador from Kumogakure no Sato. How the village had demanded the death of Hayashi Hyuga as compensation, how his father was offered instead. Till the end of the explanation, Naruto did not allow one speck of emotion to show on his face. When Neji was finished, then Naruto spoke. You speak that it is fate that the branch family will always remain bound, yet you contradicted your own belief when you tried to kill Hinata in the prelims. You tried to divert from your predestined path. All of this, because you hold a grudge against the main family? Neji finally lost control of himself. My father was taken away from me because Hayashi-sama couldn't take the responsibility for his actions. My father had to give his own life, just so Hayashi-sama could keep on living. Naruto said nothing for a while. Neji thought he had got through the blonde, but was shell-shocked when he heard Naruto's next words. I already planned on winning today, but I'll say it just for you. I won't be losing to a coward who's always blaming all of his problems on some nonsense such as fate. Someone as ignorant as you is in no position to lecture me, Neji shot back. You can never understand what it's like to be burdened with a symbol you can never be rid of. There was a pin-drop silence in the whole stadium. The whole audience felt the impact of the words. Neji couldn't have been more wrong. The senior shinobi feared Naruto would lose it, even the Hokage. But thankfully, Naruto kept a tight lid on his emotions. It wouldn't do losing it in the center of a crowd. Naruto sighed wistfully, whispering, "You're wrong. I know exactly how it feels, but enough talk." He finished in a strong voice. He made a ram seal, and Neji felt that it was better to be cautious rather than just wait and see what happens. Immediately, he jumped back, or tried to anyway. It wasn't as if he was paralyzed, but it felt like his body was stuck in mud. Just as you have to struggle to move your limbs when drowned in water or mud, Neji had to struggle to just move his arms. It was as if he was stuck in clay. What the hell is this? Naruto was calmly walking forward, now that he had successfully activated his seal. Resistance seals. While normally used for training, it's somewhat unusual to apply it in combat. You are currently experiencing a level 3 resistance. Fuinjutsu is perhaps the most versatile of the shinobi arts, won't you agree? Kage your genin is just full of surprises, Hokage Dano. To make use of seals so efficiently in combat, with just his chakra, it's almost as if he is already an expert. Not many choose to study that particular art. Hiruzen chuckled and replied, Naruto is more than just skilled in Fuinjutsu. He is perhaps the most skilled person I have ever seen. Not surprising, if you consider just who his father was. The other Kage nodded in approval. He definitely qualifies for Chunin. To think he had managed to put a Hiraishin and a resistance seal on his opponent. He had been several steps ahead of his opponent right from the beginning of the match. Hiruzen absently nodded, choosing to focus on the match. Taijutsu, Ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu. Stands, I didn't know Naruto knew Fuinjutsu like that. Ino exclaimed. Sakura smiled, proud of having a teammate like Naruto. Naruto is an expert in them, you know. Kiba hollered, YOSH. Go, Naruto. Tenten was dumbstruck just how many steps Naruto had been ahead of her teammate. The Jonin were beside themselves. Asuma was rubbing his head. You know, he really is quite well versed in sealing for his age. Not many people can apply seals with their chakra just like that. Kurenai nodded, and both of them tried to block out guys shouting of how youthfully Naruto was displaying his skills. Arena Niji stood rooted to his place, and to his horror, Naruto came running towards him, with him being unable to do anything about it. He received a painful punch on his right cheek, and the force behind it was enough to send him stumbling to his left. It hurt, considering he was experiencing resistance in his movements. Naruto was suddenly in front of him, punching at the same spot again. Only this time, it hurt a lot more than before. The result was the same. Niji went stumbling to his left. Finishing it off, Naruto 540 kicked the side of his head with such force that Niji could have sworn he saw stars in front of his eyes. He was sent onto the ground, and this time, there was no getting back up. You might think that it was because of the resistance seal, but no. He had taken way too many hits, and his body had finally given up. Niji could do nothing but glare at Naruto as he crouched in front of him. "I told you," Naruto stated softly. "Fate is a fragile concept. Our destiny is never set in stone, Niji. I am not strong because I was fated to be. I chose to work hard to reach where I am now. Hinata calls you Niji Nii-san, doesn't she? You really should stop treating her like the way you do. She only wants to unite the branch family with the main family. She looks up to you as her big brother. It is only fitting you treat her like your sister. It's time you stepped up and stopped using fate as an excuse." He then removed the resistance seal from Niji. He stood up and started walking away, letting the medics carry the injured Hyuga away. He smiled as he heard a soft, "Maybe you're right." Perhaps there was some hope, after all. Ganma declared loudly, "The winner is Uzumaki Naruto." The entire stadium burst into a tremendous applause. Everyone was clapping as hard as they could, even going so far as to stand and start chanting, "Namikaze! Namikaze! Namikaze!" The chant resonated around in the entire stadium, and within seconds, the entire stadium was chanting it as well. Naruto, for his part, smiled softly. The sight of everyone cheering for him, even if it was a name that he really didn't use, brought a lump to his throat. He was finally acknowledged by everyone. Bowing to the crowd, he turned away and headed to the genin stands. He received many good-natured pats on the back and shook almost everyone's hands on the way. The words "great job" and "congratulations" rang frequently in his ears. He just accepted them all with a smile and continued on his way. When he reached the stands, he took in the reactions. First there was Temari. She was gazing at him with a small smile, and nodded at him, mouthing "good match." Despite what had occurred between them 2 nights ago, they could respect each other as competitors. He nodded back in acknowledgement. As he walked by her, her brother was next. He just scoffed and turned away, but Naruto could spot small beads of sweat. Smirking, he continued. Gaara was staring at him, arms crossed. His expression gave nothing away, but his body twitched every now and then. Naruto spotted the cork on his gourd shaking, as if the sand was struggling to come out of it. He didn't wait to see if it would actually come out. Shino gave him a nod of respect, acknowledging his strength. "Good job, Naruto." Naruto nodded back, "Thanks." Naruto didn't need to guess the response of Shikamaru. Troublesome, the shadow user sighed, further slouching, if possible. "You just had to go and cause a ruckus, didn't you?" Naruto snorted. It was true, the crowd was still chanting his name. He shrugged in mock modesty, "What can I say, I'm just that charismatic and awesome." "Would Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaka no Gaara please come down? Kagebox a splendid display of skills, I say. Don't you agree, Kazekage Dano?" "Indeed, Hokage Dano. I really didn't expect this match to be this entertaining." Hiruzen smiled as he gazed at the blonde genin, soon to be Chunin. "Well done, Naruto. You performed better than expected. Though you could have ended the match far more quickly, you chose to amend Niji's ways by proving him wrong. You just might have gained a friend and a trusted comrade in him." He then frowned. It seems Naruto's teammate, Sasuke-kun, still hasn't arrived. And I can't spot Kakashi among the Jonin as well, he thought, looking at where the Jonin senseis were standing. He shook his head slightly in disappointment. "Kakashi, your habits just cost your genin his chance at promotion. He motioned the jonin that was standing as his guard, informed the proctor that Uchiha Sasuke is disqualified due to his lateness. Orochimaru frowned beneath the veil. He didn't want the Uchiha to be disqualified as he wanted to see how much Sasuke had improved. Hokage Dano, can we not give him 5 more minutes to arrive? I am eager to see my son test his skills against the last Uchiha. Hiruzen kept his face carefully neutral. He knew exactly why the Kazekage wanted to see the last Uchiha in action. Apologies Kazekage Dano, but I cannot allow any favoritism towards my shinobi, last Uchiha or not. Following the orders of a superior is an important part of being a Chunin. By not showing up on time, Uchiha Sasuke is showing insubordination. I cannot, in good conscience, allow such a genin such as that to progress to Chunin. He may try again in the next exams after 6 months. Orochimaru frowned. That won't do. Then perhaps a compromise is in order? It would be rather disappointing if he did not fight today, as many of the visiting nobility came here specifically to see the Uchiha fight. How about disqualifying him and denying him the chance of promotion, but allow him to fight in an exhibition match at the end of the tournament against the winner? That would allow the crowd to see the Uchiha fight, but still punish him for insubordination. Hiruzen thought it over a bit. If he disqualified Sasuke, Gaara would be declared the winner. According to the matchups, Gaara would then fight the winner of the first match, which was Naruto. While he was a bit worried about letting Naruto fight such a dangerous opponent, he had confidence that Naruto would be safe. Nodding, he said, that is an acceptable arrangement, Kazekage Dano. Stanzino was gaping at the piece of news that was revealed to the whole of Konoha and people from beyond. To think that Naruto, the dead last of their batch and the foremost prankster of Konoha, would turn out to be the son of the man Konoha almost worshipped. I never knew, she whispered. She could not believe she missed such a big fact. She was supposed to be from a clan that were masters of the mind, yet she could not see such obvious resemblance. She ought to be ashamed of herself. If not for the age, Naruto and Namake's Minato could be clones of each other. Blonde hair of almost identical shade, azure eyes that were unique to them, it could not be more obvious than that. Sakura's jaw was almost unhinged. She couldn't believe she never saw the resemblance as well. It was so obvious. And come to think of it, she treated him like crap. The son of the hero who saved Konoha from the Kyuubi, treated like crap. Not just by her, but by the whole village, including her mother. She wanted to crawl into a hole and just hide. Kiba couldn't believe it. Well, he could, but had a hard time comprehending it. The person who he thought could never become a competent shinobi in the first place had just beat the known prodigy of the Hyuga, a person who was favored the most to win the Chunin exams. And apparently, he had done without breaking a sweat. He ruefully chuckled, I couldn't have been more wrong about him. Akamaru whined in agreement. Tenten was shaking her head in disbelief. She couldn't believe Naruto had beaten her teammate, who she believed to be the strongest genin in Konoha. But then again, he had the Yandame's jutsu on his side. Arina Ganma frowned but nodded at the message sent from the Hokage. Turning to the crowd, he announced the Kage's decision. Due to not showing up in time for his match, Uchiha Sasuke has been disqualified from the final stage of these exams. He continued despite the booing from the crowd. However, the Hokage has allowed an exhibition match between the winner of the tournament and Uchiha Sasuke in order to satisfy the visiting nobility. But he won't be given the chance to get promoted to Chunin. Therefore, winner by disqualification, Sabaku no Gaara. Stands the audience, even though they were witness to a match such as that of the Hyuga and the Uzumaki, now revealed to be the sole Namakes, were distraught to hear that the Hokage had chosen to disqualify the last Uchiha. Many were waiting solely to watch that match, so the reason for their displeasure was quite obvious. Their spirits were lifted up a bit though, when they heard that the Uchiha would be fighting in an exhibition match with the winner of this tournament. Everyone began muttering amongst themselves excitedly. Just maybe, they might get to see a match between Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. The last Uchiha versus the last Namakes. Up in the area for the competing genin, Naruto was frowning at the latest announcement. A bit of a partial treatment, don't you think? He addressed Shikamaru. Shikamaru frowned as well. Yeah. He is getting a chance to fight, whereas any other genin wouldn't have been considered in the first place. Naruto nodded in agreement and added to the point, not only that, but he will be in peak condition to fight, while we would be worn out from fighting all the opponents. It's more than a bit unfair. Then he added mentally, though that match won't be happening anyways. The invasion would maybe begin as soon as the quarter-finals end. Thank you Kurama, for expanding my chakra reserves and making sure I am in top form today. He received a snort in response. I cared not much for your words. Thank me by making sure you defeat that accursed Tanuki. He is trespassing on my area. Naruto smirked at the command. He planned to do it anyway. Down on the arena, Gaara turned and started walking back to the waiting area. His sand was twitching angrily as his next victim wasn't there. His blood had been pumping to fight the Uchiha, who he saw as a strong opponent. To find out he wasn't here. The only reason he hadn't started killing everyone with his sand was that his next match was with the Uzumaki. Uzumaki Naruto was someone worthy, someone who would prove his existence. Ganma announced, the next match will be between Aburane Shino and Sabaku no Kankuro. Before he could say anything more, he was interrupted. Proctor, I forfeit. Kankuro's yell was followed by a confused look from Ganma and a roar of disapproval from the crowd. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Kankuro and Temari. While Kankuro did not glance at him, Temari cast a nervous and tense look at him. Naruto just turned back to the arena. He did not expect Sasuke of all people to be late to such an event. Maybe Kakashi was counting on to make a dramatic entrance for the last loyal Uchiha? Either way, he was disqualified, which meant one thing. His next match was with Gaara. Which was a good thing. He could neutralize Gaara before the invasion even began. Of course, that was not taking account of people who could likely interfere in the fight. In order for the invasion to succeed, it was critical that Gaara unleashed the full form of his tailed beast. He intended to suck Gaara dry of all his chakra and as soon as he was weakened, slap the 5 elements seal onto him. He just prayed he would be fast enough. Back in the arena, Ganma was announcing. Then, by default, the winner of the match is Aburane Shino. Thus, we can progress on to the next match. The next match is Nara Shikamaru vs Sabaku no Temari. Naruto glanced towards his right. He smiled when a determined look came over Temari. She pulled out her fan from her sash and swiped. Naruto whistled, impressed that such a large amount of wind was generated from just one swipe. He watched as Temari jumped onto her fan and gracefully glided towards where Ganma was standing. She set her fan down with one hand, the other hand resting on her hip and smirking, fully confident of her victory. Damn, that confidence makes her look so much sexier, Naruto thought with a slight nosebleed as he imagined some very naughty thoughts, ignoring the sniggering bastard within him. He wiped the blood off with his sleeve and glanced towards his left. Shikamaru had a panicked look on his face. Oi, why is it always my match that gets jumped up? He began to back away from the railing. I'm forfeiting as well. I don't care what my troublesome cousin says or does to me, I am not. His rant was cut off when a hand was placed on his shoulder. He turned to face Naruto with a quizzical look. What are you? It's okay Shika, Naruto said, complete with the sympathetic look. Shikamaru gave him a suspicious look, so Naruto did his best not to smile. But there's just one problem. If possible, Shikamaru narrowed his eyes even further. What? You can't forfeit. The next moment, he was standing right in front of a smirking Proctor and Temari. He blinked once, trying to figure what the hell just happened and how did he get down here. He turned around and saw the complete look of innocence on Naruto's face. He gave a look of bloody murder at the blonde he called his friend. He had the nerve to use the flying thunder god to send him to the arena. He turned around, grumbling that at least he didn't have to walk the distance from the waiting area to the center arena. Naruto smirked when Shikamaru gave a burning glare at him. He wouldn't have been able to send Shikamaru the arena if a marker wasn't already present. As it happened to be, there indeed was a marker on Temari's skin right below her left butt cheek. He put it on her while they were kissing in the alley, and he was holding her up by her butt. Her dress had rose up a bit, exposing more skin than what was appropriate for people of their age. A drop of blood trickled from his nose. Happy times. He was brought back from a trip down the gutter by the proctor's call of beginning the match. He smirked when he saw Temari outright assaulting him, but had enough sense not to pursue him in the trees. He smirked as he saw the match progress, with Shikamaru passing time so as to lengthen the limit of his shadow. While Temari was certainly clever enough to engage from long distance, she failed to see that Shikamaru was obviously leading her into a specific position. Sorry Temari, but you weren't in the winning position in the first place. You aren't ready to beat an opponent of Shikamaru's caliber yet. Naruto's guess about what Shikamaru was trying to do was proved right. While in the beginning of the match, it may have seemed that Shikamaru was randomly throwing kunai at her and missing. But Naruto knew that Shika didn't do anything without a purpose. When people are shown various, random pieces, they are confused and fail to see the bigger picture they make. The match dragged on for almost an hour, but at the end of the hour, Temari was caught in the grasp of Shikamaru's shadow. While it had seemed the kunai were just thrown around randomly, each of them had acted as a sort of platform for the shadow to jump from. Temari was too late to spot it, and finally got caught. On the arena, Temari was frozen. She couldn't believe that she was caught like this. Damn it! I was too late to see it. I should have finished him early with a large-scale jutsu. Instead, I got caught playing his game. All the high-ranking shinobi were amazed and impressed. The level of planning, the number of steps he had thought ahead, this was another shining example of Chunin material. The exams this year were showcasing some real talent. Shikamaru played to his strengths, using his extreme talent for strategies to set a trap for his opponent. A trap that was clever enough not to be noticed by his opponent until it was too late. While he had not dispatched his opponent like Naruto, the skill shown was enough to tell that the lazy Nara was worthy of promotion. Naruto had owned his fight from the start. Even though everyone was smart enough not to engage a Hyuga in taijutsu, Naruto knew he was better than Neji. Even when he was confronted with Neji's defensive technique, he proved his smarts as he found a way around it. Overall, both the matches had shown that the genin from Konoha this year were worthy of being promoted. Arina Temari felt the unnerving feeling of not being in control of her own body as it stiffly shuffled forward. It was very awkward to walk with movements not your own. As the gap closed down between them to a mere 5 feet, they locked gazes. Shikamaru's gaze was level, his eyes giving nothing away. Temari's gaze was full of defiance and fierce anger. She was glaring at him with her jade eyes so hard that Shikamaru briefly wondered if he would catch on fire. H raised his hand in the air, his shadow bind on Temari ensuring that she did the same. She quivered, trying as hard as she could to fight it. She refused to admit defeat to this lazy excuse of a shinobi. I give up. I don't have any chakra left. His lazy voice carried over clearly, and whatever the audience was going to say died in their throat. What? Was the general reaction all around. Stanzasuma was shaking his head. That kid has never been motivated for anything ever since I met him. The audience slowly started clapping throughout the stadium. People could appreciate a good battle of minds, even if it wasn't as flashy or as big as they wanted it to be. Arina Ganma just snorted and announced, winner, Sabaku no Temari. Shikamaru released his hold on Temari, who only just managed to catch herself. She stared at the retreating back of the genin, and managed to stutter out. W.I. Shikamaru turned around and answered, shrugging in a way that really made him look like a guy who doesn't want to be bothered for anything. It makes no sense to succumb to chakra exhaustion just for this when I might need my energy later. He turned to go to the audience stands. As he had lost, he won't be fighting any future matches, so there was no reason for him to go back to the waiting area. As he approached the place where he had spotted Chuji before his fight, he was slightly surprised to see almost all the rookies and Jonin senseis present, talking to Naruto. The blonde was chuckling at one of Lee's no doubt, highly youthful statements. Everyone was trying to talk to him, and Naruto was answering all their questions with a patient smile. The guy had become an instant celebrity. He spotted Shikamaru walking up and turned away from the group, choosing to grin in the shadow user's face. Shikamaru gave him a look that froze his two teammates in place, while Sakura just gave a confused look to Naruto. Asuma and Kurenai were smirking, while Lee and Guy looked as if they would burst with their youthfulness any moment. Naruto waved a hand in his direction, grin not falling from his face for even a moment. "Go on, you look like you want to say something." Shikamaru didn't bother wasting more energy to reply and merely sighed exhaustedly, dropping his glare. He dropped down between Ino and Shoji. Ino's attention immediately switched from Naruto to him, causing him to mutter something about tiresome blondes. Shoji, the sweet guy that he was, merely offered a potato chip with a smile. Shikamaru smiled back at his longtime friend and took a few. The crunching sound they made almost soothing to him. Arena Ganma looked over to the Hokage, giving a questioning look. The Hokage shook his head and waved him to continue with the matches. Ganma nodded and turned to the audience. "The quarter-final matches are over. We will now proceed to the semi-finals. First semi-final match will be Sabaku no Gaara vs Uzumaki Naruto." Audience. The crowd roared in approval of the match, as they wanted to see, once again, the only son of the Yondaime in action. They were not going to see the Uchiha in action until the very end of the final match, but they weren't complaining about seeing Naruto in action in Sasuke's place. Over to where the rookies and their senseis were standing, the atmosphere was completely different in comparison to the rest of the crowd. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. One second, everyone was talking and joking around, the other second, everyone had grim faces. Only Naruto had a completely serious face that was not filled with any fear. No one had forgotten what Gaara had done to lead back in the prelims. "Would the contestants please come down?" Gaara appeared in a whirl of sand next to Ganma. Naruto took a deep breath and straightened up. He was about to walk down to the arena when he felt a hand rest on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw that it was Asuma's. "Naruto, wow," he was serious, "be careful down there." Kurenai and Guy also nodded seriously around him. "Try to finish it as quickly as you can." Naruto smirked, "I could finish it in a flash, but I've got a different strategy in mind." With that, he walked off, the rest of the rookies mumbling their good luck wishes. He snorted when Shikamaru mumbled a "you better not die." Ino swatted his head for that. Arena Naruto kept his eye on Gaara the entire time he walked to the center of the arena. Gaara had dropped all pretense of being calm and controlled. A grin not unlike that of a psychopathic killer graced his face as Naruto came to stand in front of him. The tension was so thick that it was almost suffocating. Gaara was releasing ungodly amounts of killer amount, his cork already twitching madly, as if the sand had a mind of its own instead of being in Gaara's control. Naruto, instead of releasing killing intent of his own, slowly started saturating the air with a moderate amount of chakra. His chakra was very dense, in addition to being almost soothing and had a positive feeling to it, unlike Gaara's. It somewhat eased the tension in the air. Ganma nervously watched both of them. Kagebox Orochimaru smirked behind his veil. While he wished to see how Sasuke would do against Gaara, this was a fine arrangement as well. A match between two Jinchuriki would no doubt prove very informative. "This should be a very entertaining match, Kazekage Dano." "Your son versus the Yondaime Hokage's son," Hiruzen commented with a chuckle, hiding his nervousness about Naruto's safety. "But you must understand my concern, given what happened to one of my genin in the prelims." The other Kage waved a hand. "Worry not, Hokage Dano. Your genin has proved himself to be most ingenious and resourceful. However, if worst does come to pass, I'll stop Gaara myself." Hiruzen had to commend Orochimaru on his acting skills. Had he not known it was his former student under those robes, he would have believed that statement wholeheartedly. He turned his attention back to the match. Naruto was up against a Jinchuriki who had full control of his bijou. He was fully confident in Naruto's skills, but he couldn't wave the worry away. Something on the arena caught both the Kage's attention. Arena. Just as Ganma was about to give the signal to begin, a sudden whirl of wind and leaves interrupted them and received a frown from Naruto and Gaara. As the whirlwind settled down, Naruto had to stop himself from looking thoroughly annoyed. Two figures were standing back to back. Naruto mentally sighed, he really did want to make a dramatic entrance, after all. Kakashi and Sasuke were standing right in between Gaara and Naruto. Kakashi looked the same as always, while Sasuke had dramatically changed his attire, opting for a darker theme. He wore a black, one-piece version of his usual attire, with bandages wrapped around his left arm. Sasuke smirked as he came face to face with Gaara. He had trained heavily for the last month, even mastering a lethal jutsu. A jutsu that would secure him his victory. "Sorry I'm a bit late for our match. But we can begin now." Gaara had made it very clear back in the prelims that he was very excited to face Sasuke in the finals and couldn't wait for the match. So it came as a shock to Sasuke when Gaara coldly replied, "Move aside, you are in my way." No reply came to his mouth, only snapping out of the shock when he heard Kakashi's voice. Is that you, Naruto?" Kakashi blinked as he came face to face with a face that looked painfully similar to his late sensei. The dots took a moment to connect, and once they did, his eye went wide. Is that you, Naruto?" Naruto was already annoyed for the interruption, so his patience was thinner than usual. He snapped back, "Yes, it's me. Now would you mind taking Sasuke to the stands with you? You are interfering with my match." Kakashi blinked and turned to Ganma, "We are not late, are we?" Ganma gave him his best deadpan look, "You are a bit too late, actually. Uchiha Sasuke has been disqualified due to being late for his fight and won't be fighting in any of the matches for a chance at promotion. He will only fight in an exhibition match at the very end of the tournament." Anger filled Sasuke's features and he snarled in a whisper, "You can't do that." Ganma was unimpressed with the glare. "Tell that to the Hokage. It was his decision in the first place. Now get out of my arena," he motioned to them. Sasuke turned his snarl onto Naruto, "Move, Naruto. This is my fight." Naruto fired back in a calm manner, "Your match was in the quarter-finals, Sasuke. This is the semifinals. Get off the field." Sasuke almost made to punch Naruto when Kakashi grabbed his shoulder tightly. "Calm down, Sasuke." Turning to Naruto, he gave an eye smile. The whole month he had felt tremendously guilty for not training Naruto. Seeing this as the semifinals, it was easy to conclude that Naruto had won his first match against Neji. "Congratulations on winning your first fight, Naruto. All the best for this one." With that, he shunshined to the stands with all the rookies and Jonin senseis. Ganma turned to Naruto and Gaara. "Are you two ready?" Naruto nodded, while Gaara made his impatience known. "Just started already. Mother is hungry for his blood." Ganma nodded and chopped the air in front of him. "Hajime." Naruto immediately jumped back. Gaara whispered with a crazy expression, "Make me feel alive, Uzumaki." The cork on his gourd flew off with the pressure his sand was putting on it. An enormous amount of sand, almost half of it, Naruto estimated, flew out and rushed towards him. Naruto immediately stepped to 20 meters behind Gaara to avoid it. "It's not enough. I'll have to goad him until he unleashes every grain of his goddamn sand." He pulled out 4 of his Hiraishin kunai, and stepped back to his previous position to avoid the stab of sand. The only thing he left behind was the kunai, lodged in the ground. He repeated the process until the 4 kunai were scattered in a trapezius position around Gaara. "You won't get me like that. Come on, show me what you got." He then flashed to a kunai to escape Gaara's sand. It was a waiting game for him now. Kagebox, he is not so forward in this fight as he was in his previous one, Hokage Dano. Hiruzen nodded his head, he might be scouting for Gaara's weakness to form a viable plan. "We'll just have to wait and see." Orochimaru chuckled, "Gaara's defense is absolute, Hokage Dano. He would run out of chakra faster than he would find a weakness." Hiruzen smirked, "We both know what happened to the so-called ultimate defense of the Hyuga, Kazekage Dano." He refrained from chuckling at the silence that followed. The whole audience was leaning forward in their seats, eager to see the famous Hiraishin no Jutsu in action. The rookies were all wondering what the blonde was up to. Ino asked, confused, "Why is he scattering those kunai?" It's not like he's using them to attack Gaara or something. Shikamaru was frowning as well, trying to discern Naruto's strategy. Just what was he up to? If anyone looked at Sasuke, they would think that he was about to burst a blood vessel on his forehead. His jaw was clenched and eyes filled with jealousy and scorn as he looked at Naruto easily dodging Gaara's attempts, Sharingan fully activated. What is that jutsu? Is that the reason he is so fast? My eyes can't even begin to trace his movements. He looks as if he isn't even beginning to get tired. I should be the one who knows that jutsu, so I can use it to kill him. What does he need it for? Just how far ahead of me are you, Naruto? Sasuke was pissed as whatever jutsu Naruto was using to dodge Gaara's sand, he wasn't using any hand signs, so Sasuke had no chance of copying it. Kakashi had pulled his headband up as soon as the match had begun. While he should be saving it for the invasion, he wanted to see Naruto use his sensei's legacy in action. He watched as Naruto put the kunai around Gaara, doing nothing but teleporting from one to another. His eyes narrowed as pieces of a similar tactic came to his mind, but could not piece it together. By his side, Asuma spoke up in a grave tone, Gaara will get mad if Naruto keeps doing this. Getting that kid mad is the last thing he needs to do. Kakashi absently spoke up, eyes keenly observing the match. On second thought, that might be exactly what he might be trying to do. The three other Jonin whipped to stare at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. The genin, who had heard the conversation as well, turned to stare at him with wide eyes as well. But unlike the Jonin, there was a bit of fear and horror in their eyes. Is he mad or what? Ino almost shrieked. But Kakashi was not worried at all. From what he had seen of Naruto up until now, Naruto resembled his father more than his mother. And if Naruto was even half like his father was, he had no reason to worry. Arena he could see it, Gaara was beginning to show signs of irritation at his repeated escape attempts. He had started to flash step around as well, not wanting to give Gaara a pattern to follow his kunai. If he thought Naruto was only using the kunai to escape his grasp, he just might uproot and throw them away. Gaara was gritting his teeth as Uzumaki yet again escaped his grasp. More sand flew from his gourd as he tried cover a larger area with it, cutting Naruto's chances of escape. Why are you escaping, Uzumaki? Face me. Now's my chance. Flash stepping to a more cleared part of the arena, he called out. Gaara! Gaara narrowed his eyes, his sand momentarily pausing in its pursuit of Naruto. What is it, Uzumaki? Are you afraid to face me? Is that why you are running away? To his surprise, Naruto snorted out loud. You think those pathetic attacks can get to me? Your sand has yet to even come close to touching me. Come on, Gaara, unleash every drop of your sand. His words had the intended effect on Gaara. More sand flew out of his gourd, and he uncrossed his arms. His face split into a truly frightening grin. Naruto internally smirked. Just one more push should do it. Naruto spread his arms out, in your own words, make me feel alive. The last part was whispered with a challenging grin. That finally did it for Gaara. An opponent who was asking the same thing he asked from him. This was almost like a rare treat for him. No one asked him to make them feel alive, as he was usually the one to do it. With deadly intent, he whispered, Fine, Uzumaki. He commanded all of his sand to come out of the gourd, which was truly a huge amount. It could cover almost one entire half of the arena in ankle-deep sand. He shouted as he spread his own hands, almost laughing. Let's make each other feel alive. Kagebox Hiruzen was intently observing the match, trying to make out Naruto's plan. Naruto was mad if he wanted to fight Gaara at full power, but there was a glint in Naruto's eyes that told him that this was part of a plan. Orochimaru was barely refraining from laughing in joy. He couldn't have asked for a more entertaining match. He doubted that even Sasuke could have given such entertainment to him. He secretly signaled for his people to be ready. The time for the invasion to start was drawing to a close. Every rookie and Jonin sensei watched in horror as Naruto asked Gaara to come at him with full power. He had basically just signed his death warrant, many thought. Sakura almost shrieked, What is that idiot doing? Guy nodded grimly. I have to agree with your student, Kakashi. Fighting the genin at full power seems to be an extremely bad idea. Kakashi gave no reply as worry began creeping in him. He could only hope Naruto had a plan to deal with that amount of sand. Sasuke intently watched with his Sharingan active, ready to spot any hand signs that Naruto might weave. He would take any opportunity to copy Naruto's jutsu. Not once did concern rang for his teammate potentially facing his death. The crowd gasped at seeing the huge amount of sand rotating behind Gaara in form of a vortex. Gaara was grinning in a way that would have sent many shinobi running in the opposite direction, but not Naruto. Naruto was prepared for this. Take this, Uzumaki. The vortex rushed towards with the force of a sandstorm. Naruto narrowed his eyes and gathered his chakra. He jumped almost impossibly high, clean above the rushing vortex, two Hiraishin kunai in hand. He threw one of them 20 meters behind Gaara, completing the pattern he was going for. Gaara was so deep into his bloodlust that he failed to take notice of the kunai arranged around him in a pentagon. The other one went 20 meters ahead of the kunai he just threw. As he predicted, the vortex changed direction and headed right for him when he was still in the jump. He thought he might have heard someone shouting his name, but he could have imagined it. Just as the vortex was about to hit him, he flashed to the last kunai he threw, momentarily entering safe zone. Stan Sakura could no longer hold her concern for her teammate. Everyone watched in horror as the vortex almost swallowed, at which point Sakura shouted, Naruto! She practically melted in relief when Naruto disappeared, reappearing at the kunai he just threw. Looking back, she saw that everyone unconsciously relaxed from the tension. Kakashi didn't know that he was holding his breath until he released it. He had not seen such dangerous maneuvers in a long time. He was used to seeing his sensei do it like that, but Naruto on the other hand. It was strangely nostalgic, almost like seeing his sensei in action. Arena Naruto appeared at the kunai in a crouch, expression serious and eyes set on the sand vortex. Gaara turned around and wasted no time in sending the vortex towards Naruto very gleefully, but this time, he split it in 4, so that it would converge on Naruto from 4 different directions. Naruto only needed 2 hand seals to make this work. He had already saturated the air with his chakra before, so his chances of success were high. Tiger Bird, Suetun, Mizu Tatsumaki no Jutsu. Naruto converted the entire amount of chakra he had saturated the air with into water chakra. A giant spinning vortex made of water of his own seemed to suddenly come into existence around him. The 4 smaller vortexes of sand crashed into the